Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon and good evening. As someone famous once said, that is not on this show, but I think I stole that. At any rate, I am in the studio once again. It's a beautiful, beautiful day outside. Saturday we're filming this week.
Yes.
And I want to thank you for coming in, Nicholas Richardson, and joining us on a Saturday. I must say you're looking, as usual, resplendent.
Thank you.
May I use that word?
You may.
In reference to you?
Of course.
Yeah. And we have, thank you for giving me permission, sir.
My pleasure.
And we have on the horn in Nova Scotia, Professor Uziemblo will be joining us from Canada today. What's it like out there? It's amazing, huh?
Oh, it's beautiful. It's snowy here, you know.
Yeah, it's very early in the morning for you. Early in the morning for you. But I'm going to be on a show very early in the morning soon. Some sort of voice.
I'm just asking why Anthony is joining us from the North Pole today.
Anthony is joining us from his igloo in Eskimo land, or as I call it, Inuit land. Because I like to say actually I identify as Inuit one day a year, just to show solidarity with our brothers up there in the north.
Kind of one of the famous senators from the U.S.
What?
Kind of like one of those senators in the U.S. that identifies as a Native American.
Yes. I do find it culturally appropriate. I don't know. I don't know. I just do the best I can. Yeah. Anyway, I like to make everybody happy, and that never works. It always ends up as a disaster.
Is it that cold in Bydgoszcz?
Sorry, sir?
My apartment.
He's in his house or his flat or his apartment or whatever you want to call it. Mishkanye, as they call it.
You know that you can burn books for heat.
Oh, why waste a good book?
on heating yourself?
Yeah.
I've got some books. I finished my Shakespeare. It's a big volume, and I memorized all the Shakespeare plays so I can burn it now. I use it as a Yule log. Yule log, in remembrance of Yul Brynner. Remember him? Yul Brynner?
Yes.
Oh, yes. He used to play Chinese people a lot.
That's right. That's why you know him. He played Genghis Khan. But not, and also other Asiatic types. But was he not from...
And he was actually Russian.
He was Russian. He wasn't something like from a stan or something.
No, he was
Uzbekistan, I thought, maybe. Yeah. Russian. Okay. I believe that. I mean, we we can't argue with him, call him up. He's not available for that.
No.
He's been gone for a while. Mr. Brynner, I call him. Mr. Brynner. Great film, the Magnificent Seven.
Magnificent Seven, excellent film.
Every performance, pure gold.
Very good.
Pure gold. They don't make them like they used to.
They don't, unfortunately. They don't.
Do
They don't make most things like they used to.
They don't. You've seen a modern version, Christmas coming up? Have you seen a modern version of A Christmas Carol?
No. Well, I mean, there have been so many, but the
new one's going to be called A Christmas Alice. That's no good, is it?
No good at all.
Or A Christmas Kanye.
Do you write your own jokes, or have you got a script writer?
I'm making them up as I go along.
Yeah, clearly.
Yeah.
Guys, why are you so polite today? He's wearing old clothes as if it is winter. You guys are polite. I'm just all weirded out.
I know, it's crazy. Yeah, you're pointing at it. He's pointing at you as if you were in the same room. I like that.
No.
We could do some Three Stooges stuff if I just had prepared a script.
But what is today's topic?
Other side, right to your left side, Mr. Uziemblo. Professor, I should say. There you go. Now you've got it. No, you're to your right. There you go. And now we're both on the right side. That's lovely. We got a lot of great topics today, and as we usually do on the show.
Yes, indeed.
These are prepared.
Go on then.
And carefully stored in secrecy in a safe, which is only unlocked as I appear at the station.
Yes.
And today it's usually
unlocked by...
What?
You're a man of many words today.
Yes, many words. It's because we have to do the show fast, because there's a live program following us, and we're on Saturday today.
Yes. You've already said that, so we're very
I'm sorry, but I decided...
I'm doing like Larry King now.
I decided for myself that I'm going to start my being on the show with a statement every time, and I'm going to say that statement now.
Please.
Russia is going to lose.
Russia is going to lose. Well, that's a provocative statement. Let's get right into it then. Anthony's just come back from being over the line, I call it, the other side.
Okay.
That's what I say. And that's kind of code for being in the war zone. Yeah? But the war kind of came close to us this week. The whole world was talking, we'll come back to Russia's going to lose. This is going to be an underlying topic today. Russia, who should we fear the most, Russia or China? This is a big question, isn't it?
Do you want the answer?
I do, and I think we're going to get there over time, and I hope that all of you are going to talk about that and give your learned opinions and experienced opinions. Anthony, you just come back. What was it like over there, and what were you doing?
Doing a lot of. I met with the chief of defense and also the head chief of their medical for the hospitals. There was a lot of jubilation Thursday, Friday, and then came home Saturday, of course, because Kherson was taken over. Half of Kherson, the majority of the city has been taken over, except for the crossing of the river where the Russian defenses, they are believed to still be there, but they aren't. They're meeting no resistance, even though when they get further towards the Oblast, they are heavily fortified. I've sent a lot of intelligence over there to tell them, hey, they are fortified. And they have verified, yes, we know, we're just getting ready. We need to get our forces across. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I had soldiers that we're still keeping coming over from the hospitals getting over here to get treatment because they don't have the facilities that are able to keep it consistent. So the power is sporadic. Even back on Thursday before the missile strikes on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And yeah, that was pretty much it. We kind of knew that they were going to happen. We were preparing for those guys to have rockets coming in again. And luckily I was out already. But
you left before the strikes, which were Tuesday or Wednesday? Tuesday?
Monday night.
Tuesday, night, yeah.
And Wednesday morning. They stopped Wednesday morning.
Yeah, Wednesday morning, that's right, because I talked to a couple of people over there. I forgot which day it was. There seemed to be so many missile strikes. What about, what day did you get out? Tuesday, did you say?
Yeah, negative. I got out Friday night, Saturday morning.
Okay, so you've been back a week, right?
Yeah.
And you were meeting, of course, in Kiev, right?
Yeah, back in Kiev, near the Embassy Center and the government center is where the president's located.
Did you drive over there, take the train, combination?
To drive, 19 and a half hours.
Wow. No, it's a slog, especially this time.
Just one way.
Yeah, just one way. It's a slog this time of year, isn't it? Yeah. What about this, what you read, Anthony, and then we'll come to Nick, and then we'll come to Olgierd. What you read on the, what was your initial reaction, let's say, when you heard that there were two people killed in Poland near the border by missiles from somewhere not outside of Poland?
My honest reaction or the professional reaction? Which one do you want?
Both.
Honest, my personal one is like, okay, here we go. We're going to see which NATO members are actually which. Basically, which one has the balls to stand behind what they actually said they were going to do. Professional reaction, okay, where did this launch? Where did the launch come from and why? The professional reactions coming across the board, finally, after I asked for information to receive, these were perceived to be Kh-55s, cruise missiles that were capable of carrying nuclear warheads, and that is already confirmed. I've gotten the reports in. The third photos that we've gotten in also confirm that possible one of those rockets was also a Kh-101, also a cruise missile that is also nuclear warhead capable. These are not the multiple nuclear warheads capable ICBMs, nor some of the ones that are also capable of carrying the S-300s. The S-300s also can carry nuclear warheads too. But these are cruise missiles, so meaning these are fired with a certain range that are 350 kilometers plus. That is, to me, unfathomable that Ukraine would even do such a thing. People are saying that it's Ukraine. It's impossible that it's Russian because they cannot have – basically their fleet is unable to get close enough to fire that range of a rocket to get towards Poland because they'll run out of fuel before then, so it end up reaching Czechoslovakia, somewhere
Slovakia,
in
Slovakia, yeah.
Slovakia.
Or somewhere in the mountains, but or around Lviv or south of there, yeah. Romania.
It would not be able to reach anywhere near that point of impact. So the POI. The point of origin, we're still trying to figure out, but we believe that it is coming from a northern country, directly north of Ukraine. Of course, everybody knows what that is, because those designs of that rocket are one of the older versions, and that's verified right there from that. So speculations aside, this is actually a bigger issue than most of us care to even think about, because it's two, not just one. It's not something that was sporadically shot over or a mistake. It is not a grave mistake from Ukraine. They would never even do such a thing to our partners, especially to their neighbors that have been helping them out for the past 9 months, needless to say, because every other European country has basically turned their backs to them. They've only allowed a few people. Poland has let in more than 2.5 million, 3 million, almost 3 million now. And would be a great mistake to do that. So it's definitely not in Ukraine, which leads
it's
most
not
of
a Ukrainian defensive missile.
It is not a Ukrainian defense missile.
So we can, okay. So, well, that's what you're saying. I just wanted to
yes, that is
clarify that.
Yes, that is yet to be verified, the location of the point of origin. That's the POO site, because it is right now believed that it is not from the Russian side. It is believed to be a lot closer than that. I am not naming the country of which it could be possibly, but I'm going to leave that to your guys' individual reasons and educational guess.
Well, there's only one, okay, you don't have to say it, but we can say, the only country that is close enough is Belarus. So it's not Moldavia, because they're not, or whatever that place is.
No.
The province that or the sliver that the Russians have there. I don't believe they're armed in this way. They're too far from the Black Sea, as you've said. So this is interesting. The implications are very interesting. Now, I want to go to, hold on, Olgierd. I want to hear what you have to say. Absolutely, please hold on. But I want to give Nicholas a time to talk here, because this is fascinating, what we're hearing. Nicholas, give us your take initially and what you think about Anthony's saying.
Well, I initially assumed that whatever it was, and because we didn't know what it was, and a lot of people were jumping to conclusions, but I assumed that whatever it was had not been deliberately aimed at Poland. That I assumed if it was anything at all, had gone off course. Because if it had been something deliberately aimed at Poland, you might have thought they might have chosen a more important target.
Well, was this not near a sort of, we talked about this,
well,
near an energy connection
yes,
point?
it is allegedly near within a
we
few
don't know
kilometres, but we don't know that. There's a lot of
We don't
speculation.
know
So I
that.
assumed, as you get in warfare, that something had gone astray.
Yes.
I assumed at worst it was, if it was a Russian missile, it had been aimed at that area between the Ukrainian border and Lviv, where Russia knows, the world knows, that a lot of the material which is coming from NATO and beyond is coming via Poland, and that's the part where it's likely to be, and there are a couple of bases in that area. So I assumed that if it was that, it had gone astray. Or I assumed it was either some air defense missile which had gone astray, maybe a mid-air collision.
So Anthony's saying that's not the case.
But I don't have the specialist knowledge, of course.
Yeah,
but
neither of us does.
And apart from up to the terrible, for the family of the people concerned, I didn't, unlike, and I was in this station at the time, I didn't, unlike most of the people here, assume that World War III had just broken out under our very noses. I just assumed it was one of these things that happens in war. Missiles go in the wrong direction occasionally.
Yes.
Whoever fired them, it doesn't really matter. You're asking what was my personal view at the time.
Yeah.
And I just assumed it was one of these accidents.
And what do you think about what Anthony says?
Well, then
let's go to Olgierd.
Yeah, well, what Anthony says is both interesting. Obviously, he has more professional knowledge than I have. And in a funny sort of way, rather horrific, because if it means we now have the madman to the north joining the madman to the further east.
He has no choice.
That's a bit frightening.
He has no choice.
Yes.
I mean, this was annexed by Russia some time ago. His brain was annexed by Putin as well.
Well, of course, yes. Yeah. But that puts a wholly different complexion on it.
Yeah.
But even so, even that, I'm still very surprised, if that is the case, that Putin, no matter how desperate he is, would seek to engage NATO.
Yeah. Olgierd, come in now. Would you please tell us what your read is on this?
Well, I'm really no specialist. Anthony is a specialist here. I really don't know much about it.
As an intelligent man, we've had the specialist talk, and now we'll do some opinion. Yeah.
Well, NATO needs to react. You know, the best reaction is the Erdogan reaction, the one that scares the Russians.
Which would be?
I'm not the one to call the war. It's a terrible thing to say.
Yes.
But
how do you respond? I think the interesting question raised is this crossed all of our minds, I'm sure, when they heard the story immediately. Oh, this is a defensive missile gone astray. All of us thought, well, you would say that if you wanted to avoid a wider war. That was my first reaction. Either it is, which is pretty bad, shooting the wrong way, for example. And what's the range of these defensive missiles? And how does it go that far astray, even from Lviv, when it hasn't ever happened before? Number two,
it actually happened before. There were some missiles randomly flying over even to Serbia at the moment during the war.
To answer the question,
missiles have gone as far astray as Serbia. See, you are a good specialist. That was a good point. Go ahead, Tony.
The range of the defense ones that are the S-300s are 350 kilometers. Cruise missiles have a greater range of to 800 to 900.
Like 1,000, isn't it?
Yeah, but the idea was that a defensive missile be sent up from Lviv and to take out one of the missiles striking at Lviv and might have gone astray to the Polish border, right? Now, it's a complicated thing how these missiles work, and I don't think we're going to get into that now. People can read about that online.
What I was saying about the Erdogan reaction is when Erdogan was showing Russians where is their place, he started just shooting their planes down. He started winning the war in Nagorno-Karabakh. We would need to do something like that. Like,
you mean in Syria or where?
I don't know.
Where was Erdogan doing this?
I don't know.
Where was Erdogan? Where was Erdogan shooting down the Russian planes?
No, the random Russian planes flying over Turkey.
Just flying over Turkey. I see.
Yeah, okay.
He did.
Yeah. Well, that's violating Turkish airspace. There's no love lost between Turkey and Russia historically. We all know that.
It's a terrible thing. It's people's lives in there.
If you're a diplomat and you're looking at this, do you want to? I mean, this has been the problem.
I can tell you what my wife said immediately.
Please. Why not?
She's a smart lady. She said that they're going to say it was a stray missile, whatever it is.
Well, yes, she was right.
But the other thing is that you guys have to consider that they are calling Poland an eager country to go to war. We're not. We've been on the front lines for God knows how many months now, 9 months, and not a damn thing has been done by NATO. Pardon my French. Will, you can kill me later for that one. But
now you can even say, beep.
Oh, true. I could do that. But
I can say beep, beep, beep to that.
Yeah, I know that sometimes you feel like that. Yeah, especially on this subject.
But you guys got to think about it this way. Their reaction to this has been spot on. The only thing that I would have done differently if I were the NATO chief general or the secretary general is I would have bolstered the forces here a lot earlier than the reactive reactions that they're doing now. They're not being proactive, they're being reactive. And that's a bad thing. And Russia's and Belarus's actions have been exposing the weaknesses that NATO has had for a long time. And this is one of the damn things that is one of the issues. Because if they would have bolstered the forces there on the defensive side in the east, they would have been able to catch it with some of the missile systems that they've been being provided by the United States and other governments that we have that are partnered with Poland.
It's just they're very reluctant to provide us with the proper anti-air missiles. That's been a long story for a long time already.
Right. Yeah. I'm leaning forward like it's going to help me to hear you better. It's ridiculous. Or if I was my back's hurting after driving for a long time. No, it doesn't help. I can sit back and hear you just as well. If I lean forward, it doesn't help at all. It's all in my ear. Yeah. At any rate, I was just as we go to the break. What do you reckon the 10 most powerful countries are in the world? Let's start with the top 5. Anybody want to throw out what you think? Number 1 most powerful.
US, and then the rest.
Yeah, it's kind of true. The U.S. at 21.4 trillion GDP, even with all the nonsense that's been going on, as much as we've made mistakes and hamstrung ourselves, we're still way up there in terms of GDP. We're 30 to 30 to 40% higher than the GDP of China, for example. Okay? About 38%, just estimating from looking at the figure of 14 trillion. So 21.5 trillion in the United States, 14 trillion the Chinese. We know, of course, the United States military, that Russia spends, for example, 8% of what the United States spends. 8%.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And then next country would be?
UK.
In terms of GDP,
India.
China.
Japan.
Japan?
Oh.
Yeah, 5 trillion. Then the UK, Germany, 4 trillion. I'm rounding up. UK,
But
3 trillion.
To say about the Germans, they didn't have that
France.
increase until recently.
They didn't have what?
They didn't have that 4 trillion in their GDP for military spending up until recently. They've done analysis on the GDP spending for increase the military to modernize it because they knew they were falling behind.
Who's that?
Germany.
Yeah, but their whole GDP is 4 trillion.
Oh, I'll take that.
So you're talking about their NATO spending should be 2% of that, right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we got to go to break. Thank you. Stay with us and enjoy these important announcements. That's what keeps us on the air. Well, one of the things. Also, Nicholas is busking.
No chance.
Yep. Welcome back, everybody. We were talking about the 10 most powerful countries in the world, but we're really concerned with the top 3, aren't we, for this purposes of today, which are the USA with 21.5 trillion GDP, China, these are estimates, China, take it, I just made them up, China with 14, I'm not going to let them win, 14 trillion, and Russia with only 1.6 trillion or 1.7 trillion GDP, which is not very good, considering all the things that have happened to them recently. They're a one-horse economy. They only have one horse.
Indeed. One horse.
And that's oil. If oil were a horse.
If oil were a horse. Indeed.
Yes?
Yes.
That's what my grandma used to say. If only oil were a horse, we wouldn't have to buy gasoline.
Yeah, good.
Yeah? Your grandmother never said anything like that?
Nope.
When she was darning your socks?
No, didn't say anything like that at all.
No. Okay, the top 10, so the top 10 other ones, let me just run down the list, and then we'll come back to our subject, are, just to iterate, are Japan, right after Russia, right after, in terms of GDP, Japan is number 3, actually. But in terms of power, because of nuclear power, Russia's number 3. Okay, but not in terms. Germany, UK, France, Japan, all of those countries have a higher GDP than Russia, and South Korea has the same GDP as Russia. South Korea, and New York State.
There you are.
New York State, same GDP. Heavily taxed, my friends tell me, who live in New York. That's why they moved to New Jersey. You can see the city, but you're not paying the taxes. It's just across the river. All right, so we came back to Anthony's revealing some point that it doesn't look like it was a Ukrainian defensive missile. It looks like this is an attempt to avoid Dr. Strangelove, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. To avoid that scenario, with Slim Pickens riding the atomic bomb down over Moscow. It was originally supposed to be John Wayne playing that part, but he turned it down as being anti-American, the film, as we told Mr. Kubrick at the time. That this we don't know exactly where it came from, but we might surmise that it came from a country located near Ukraine to the north, and not Lithuania, and not Finland. It's too far away, for example. Maybe those darned Latvians up to no good again.
The Russians were doing some really heavy lifting of missiles in and out of Belarus for a long time already.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and
riots.
they've turned the place into an armed camp. And all along the border, they're all in there, and both borders actually, Polish too. It's there's nothing funny about war,
Not at all. No.
except total annihilation. That's hilarious, isn't it? Talk about existential problems. They keep saying it's an existential problem. I expect to see a bunch of people sitting around in a cafe drinking black coffee and wearing berets and discussing Camus and Sartre.
Yeah.
Sort of 1950s scenario. Every time they say existential, because that's what they mean is a extinction scenario or something like that.
If we're not careful, that's what will happen.
I think we're not being careful.
We're not being.
I'm scared.
Part of the problem is.
That's why I'm trying to make
and I've
light.
said it applies to so many things which are going wrong, is that the caliber of politicians is not good enough for the decision-making which has to be taken. These are younger people than they used to be, with no real-world experience, being faced with very, very difficult decisions, and they have nothing on which to draw in terms of experience, in terms of knowledge. And most of them, or many of them, have got to their places by disdaining the opinions of experts. And this is quite frightening, actually. If you look at the cabinet, say, going back a few years, obviously, but you look at Mrs. Thatcher's cabinet, which I still always refer to as sort of a case study in the final great cabinet, whatever your views of the politics, I'm talking about the calibre of the people involved. In her case, when she went to war with the Falklands, she had in her cabinet people who had, in fact, served in the armed forces. She was surrounded by people who knew what they were doing, who knew what it would be like, had at her disposal much bigger armed forces than we have today, in a generally much safer world. And so, by definition, she had a much greater chance of getting the decisions right. And she did, of course. Now we face far greater challenges in all sorts of areas, and we have people who we've seen in the United Kingdom, alas, over the last few months, are completely at sea. One of the tragedies of the latest budget, or whatever they wanted to call it, autumn statement, is, of course, the defence expenditure increase, which Liz Truss had promised, is not going to take place.
Right.
And this is, we have war in Europe. We have war in the next country from where you and I are sitting now. We have the British Army, which has sent a lot of weapons to Ukraine. But where are the plans to replace those? Where are the plans to say, OK, there's a war, thank God it's happening in a different country, we have a chance, why are we not bolstering our own defences?
Instead of which,
it's the usual, let's spend more money on the National Health Service, which now has X% more doctors, X% more nurses, X% more expenditure than 5 years ago, and Y% fewer beds and patients being treated. I mean, somebody's taking the mickey. We need to have a complete reassessment of what government's priorities are. And the first one must be, in any government, anywhere in the world, to defend the country.
Yeah.
And we have been for too long, and it's not just us, it's worse in Germany. Anthony mentioned about Germany rearming at this point. Everybody has assumed, oh, well, we'll do nothing. And if it all comes nasty, the Americans will ride over the horizon and save us so they can spend their money and we won't. And if we want to trade with people and give weapons to people, I mean economic weapons to people, I mean, the problem is China is the biggest threat, because China is like the Soviet Union with money.
Yeah.
What we didn't realize at the time was the Soviet Union was not that well equipped, and they had no money anyway.
Gosh, that's a good point.
Now we have China, and we have created, over the last 20 years, we have made China very, very wealthy, and we are seeing that it has had no effect on the growth of democracy or liberal behavior in China, quite the reverse. We have given this evil collection of people, and I'm talking about the power center of the Chinese Communist Party, the means and the opportunity now to alter the world to our detriment. As I say, the Soviet Union with money. Think about that. And people
I think it's a great phrase, actually, and I will steal it.
Yeah, well, I think I probably stole it from somebody else. I probably an American.
Really?
I think it was an American general said this or something.
I'll thieve from your theft.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that is what we face, and we're all sort of. And the Germans say, oh, it's all very difficult. Well, we just want to sell the Chinese more cars and things, and
Tony, what do you say to isolationists? We're going to come to you, Olgierd, when we talk in a minute about who we should fear most and continue with that subject, and I'll let you hold forth on who we fear, Russia or China or both. I'll let you weigh in with that in a second, Olgierd. But I want to say to Tony, what do you say to people in the United States who don't understand Nicholas's well-made point, I believe well-made point, obviously it's my opinion, that we are defending ourselves by defending Ukraine and defending Central Europe against this kind of behavior. What do you say, Anthony? And do you have that conversation with people, or are most of the people you hear? Okay, tell us what your read is.
My read on my friends that I've actually talked to, that I tell them to stop putting their heads in the hole in the ground, stop acting like an ostrich. The world is a lot bigger oyster than just the United States. There are multiple effects that could add 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th order effects that they don't understand if they don't actually defend and send forces or send some sort of help to defend Ukraine. Because Ukraine, as I've said before, is right now fighting for the fate of the free world and its democracy and democracy in itself and its existence. Kind of like how the Spartans did when the other countries of Greece at the time that weren't part of the whole Greece turned their backs to the Spartans and said, "Hey, no, we can't. We don't believe that they're going to do that. We are strong on our own individuality." Like, without coming to unification, Spartan knew that they needed to do that in order to unify and do that in order to defend against the Ottoman Empire.
The Persians. Yeah.
Sorry.
Persians, right?
And it's the same thing here. They're defending against the Russians, of which the Russians, we don't know what kind of forces they're fighting against or whom they have behind them. I've mentioned the BRIC countries, which they have shown no interest in defending or providing any help or aid to their supposed democracies, of which they're not. And it's just pseudo-democracies. And you can see that clearly with China. They have gotten rid of all their oppositions inside their own cabinet and gave the sole power to one individual. And that sole power has been in power for the past 20 years. And it's extremely dangerous. And then you can see that sort of rhetoric exactly with Russia, and you can see what has led to Russia. And Nick said it perfectly. Soviet Union with a lot of money, and they're actually bolstering their military might, and they're getting ready for an eventual launch, possibly towards Taiwan. And that could spark World War III.
Yeah, and it's really Taiwan that you have to worry about, because the Chinese don't have a great history of invading far beyond their own very close sphere. I mean, they've never invaded Japan. They helped North Korea, and they helped to some extent the Vietnamese.
If I may.
But there was more the Russians. Yes, jump in, please.
If I may. I just wanted to say I disagree with Nick with his nice statement.
Okay.
It's not Soviet Union with money.
Okay.
It's Soviet Union with actual means of production. And that's the grand difference, because the produce in Soviet Union was lousy, bad quality, and not modern.
Wow.
If you look at China and the way they progress, that's
dangerous.
Different. And that's why they are dangerous.
Exactly.
It's not just money, because Russia had a lot of money from oil.
No.
It's different.
Olgierd, and you hit it right on, man, because the way they have weaponized, the way they can reverse engineer a lot of the technology, the U.S. was caught by surprise with the stealth technology, especially from the J-20. They have multiple other platforms that have the technology like that. The destroyers, for God's sake, the new aircraft carriers that are about to be launched within the next 6 months to 8 months, depending on if they can actually get resources to there. Of course, they'll find a way. They're China. They always do. But yeah, things of that nature that we have really taken for granted and thought they could never accomplish. It's like that's what I tell them, my friends back in the United States.
Check the list of the new supercomputers. Where are the most powerful computers in the world? And most of them are where?
China and Taiwan.
No, I thought one of those was in the game place near where I live, but never mind. They seem to be
all of them.
It's 24/7, that game place. Never stops. I don't know what they're doing in there.
Yeah,
no, China is. So we're saying that China is to be feared much more. So why this war with Russia? Is it a testing ground for the greater war against China? Is it an accident?
When we're discussing the thing, I told you that for me it's quite obvious that China actually might have, in a way, not really caused the war, but complied with the war in order to check what is the reaction of the West. The first, to test the armaments of the West and the East. And I think that what Ukraine did actually may postpone the war on Taiwan at least 5 to 10 years. because China realized they don't have the marine resource to take Taiwan at the moment. If you look the way the Russian fleet works.
Gosh, that's a good point, too.
It is a very good point.
Yeah, we're making good points
because
today.
the point is that for many years, the Chinese military did look to the Russian military for ideas and how to do things.
Yeah.
And that's the point. I think the other very valuable point from the war in Ukraine is that the response of the NATO and everybody else to the war in Ukraine, and the sort of unified response, took the Chinese and the Russians by surprise. Russia probably thought, or China and Russia together probably thought, that after what had happened in Crimea, there would be, some angry tweets from Western leaders and nothing much would really happen. And they would conquer Ukraine in 24 hours and it would all be too much trouble for the West actually to do anything. Fortunately, the West was very united. Even more fortunately, the Ukrainian forces were able to make sure the country did not capitulate in 24 hours and are now, with the support of Western weaponry, fighting back most successfully, of which the regaining of Kherson and the blocking then of the ability of the Russians at present to be able to move towards Odessa and take the whole of the coastline of Ukraine in the south is very good. And that's why we should be giving the Ukrainians whatever they ask for in terms of weaponry, because it sounds very cynical. It's not cynical, but actually, at the end of the day, if you can guarantee your country's safety by fighting a war on somebody else's territory, I'm sorry to say, and that may sound unduly cynical, but that is a very good result. And that is a result, or we'd rather there wasn't a war at all, but there has been this war, and we're all much better off if we allow and assist the Ukrainians to win it, get back their territory, and then somehow, from a position of strength, negotiate some sort of peace. That, I think, is the best result for everybody. Well, the last thing we want is for this war to spread. And I think even Russia's talking about this mobilization, and they're going to, they haven't lost yet, and it'll be a long time before they actually lose completely, because Russia still has the ability to cause a lot of damage.
And throw a lot of
But I mean, I think the main point, and the main point
which is what they do.
And the main strength is obviously the hard determination and bravery of the Ukrainian population, but also, so far, with a few people, a bit of reluctant foot dragging by the Germans as usual, the united response of everybody else, which I think the Chinese, will have noted.
Yeah,
they will realize that
from the beginning,
walking into Taiwan may not be quite as easy as they had assumed.
Yeah, I think Japan's answer, Japan's reaction was quite important from a Chinese point of view, because Japan was not slowing down, even though they lost the prime minister.
I think that raising the question of Japan, that Japan is a much more successful military force historically, and naval force. I mean, they beat the Russians, the Chinese countless times, and they're very experienced. They're islanders. They used to, like the British, they mirror the British in so many ways.
Indeed, yes.
In terms of chivalry, which samurai culture. And in terms of their patterns of conquest or imperial takeovers, or the British more successful because not so...
The key in all of this, as we've discussed before...
Not so internecine.
Yeah, the key in all this, as we've discussed so often on this programme, is willpower. Putin assumed that he could take Ukraine because even if it was a slightly longer battle than he was expecting, A, he expected to win, B, he assumed the West would not have the will to defend itself.
That's true.
I mean, I'm a slightly flippant remark, but we're more interested in transgender lavatories than we are in tanks and machine guns.
Well, it's not flippant at all. We're being very superficial.
That's where we've got to. Let's pull down a few statues because we don't worry about it. This is what destroys empires, countries, military success, is decay from within.
Yes, it's the decline. I mean, it's a classic thing that people have been talking about forever, but gosh, when it's staring in your face, the decline of all empires follows this sort of period of decadence in which luxury takes place over duty.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to be even more controversial now.
Well, please be.
One of the issues now is the weakening and the deliberate weakening of military forces in the United States and now creeping into the United Kingdom by this insistence on diversity, and this particular insistence on women in frontline military roles, and then changing some of the qualifications so that women can pass the necessary physical tests. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Obviously, a man who has never studied the legend of the Amazonian women.
Well, that's different.
And here's a man, Anthony.
Yes, I'm not saying that women...
I can't believe you're raising this...
I'm not saying that women can't in the general sense. I'm saying in the particular case.
But Nick is absolutely...
Or in the sense of cold.
Yeah, but in the particular case, if you want a regiment of women, and look, in the Kurdish women fighting in that whole ISIS-type war, they did fantastic work. I'm not disputing that.
We know what you're saying.
But I'm saying that you shall not say, well, the Royal Marines, you've got to carry 50, 60 kilograms for 24 hours without stopping. But a woman can't, so we're going to change the rules for everybody.
Well, for goodness sake...
This is not what you want in an army. I'm sorry. You want fit young men.
I'm really sorry, but actually women were the actual carriers in whole of the Yunnan province, and they carried more and for longer periods than men.
Hold on. Olgierd.
And Anthony's wife beats him in bicycle racing.
Yes.
All the time. Now, hold on. Norway has specialist units that the women are also part of the special forces that do not change their standards. They meet the standards. Kurdish women did the same thing as the men did, if not harder, because they had to fight harder, because if they were captured, they would be killed and brutally abused. And it's the same thing. The United States has to uphold those standards. Those standards are there for a reason. The standards are there to survive the rigors of war.
Yes, and one of their main programs is the Anchor Baby, the secret Anchor Baby program, where they send the agents, the special forces women, they're pregnant and they have the baby in the foreign country. And then they can't kick them out.
Now you're confusing things.
He's trying to be funny. But no, but I seriously agree. I
think
don't
Nicholas
think
is right, too.
In any way important to have women or men in the service. The important is to not lose the standard. I don't believe that Israeli forces have problems with them, with standards.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Not at all.
Have all women units. Don't have mixed units.
No. The Israelis have done very well with women, too.
The soldier who defends my home.
Yep. Sorry, Olgierd, I stepped on you. Didn't mean to. Did you want to finish? No,
I just say that I don't care what kind of underwear or what kind of sex the man has or the woman has that is defending my home unless it's he, she, whatever is defending my home.
History has proved that there's a place in a war economy and even the military.
Well, of course.
For both men and women. So, but I don't think that necessarily means that your generals have to wear dresses.
No.
As we have one in the United States.
By all means,
that's debilitating.
Even if you want, and it's perfectly feasible to have all women units. If that might be better than mixed units for a number of reasons.
Well, I can see what those might be. They're rather obvious. But I don't.
Then you can remember the Gaddafi gods.
We have to come. We only have a few minutes, and we're gonna finish the program in its entirety, which is nice because there is a live program coming on after us, after our recording. I want to say one thing about China that I brought up on another program. It's one of my favorite things to bring up. And since we are talking about China or Russia, who you fear more, I still think that China has a massive problem with the amount of just people living on subsistence level there in the country, and the unhappiness of 1 billion, 1.1 billion, or maybe more out of that 1.5 billion who live on the subsistence level. Although at the moment they say in America people are living, 60% are living month to month. I don't know how you figure that, but how you know that. But I'm talking about people who live on subsistence level in Greater China. Now, Olgierd, doesn't that mean that China has a much bigger economic problem over the long term than we're taking note of so far today?
I think that the economic problem of China will come out from a completely different place. Is the moment that they stop having a healthy change of leaders on every level, as they do now. They don't have any kind of mechanism that will assure change of leadership. They're going to have lockdowns and the equivalent of human, strokes, because they will have the problem of leadership. Now, after Xi takes over for the third term, breaking their own constitution, and he is obviously winning the fraction war, no more will be the measure of whatever the ability is in any way important. Now the loyalty will be important. And you know how it works for the economy, sooner or later.
So you think the ossification the fossilization of the leadership is absolutely crucial. We've seen that over and of past empires. This is another empire.
All the lockdown madness that is going on in China. It's like my friends coming over from China, they say they still have lockdowns. They have problems with flying from city to another city within the country because the phone system doesn't work, because somebody hacked it down so other people can fly.
Right. Yeah. And so they still have these internal problems. They have a leadership problem, they have a population poverty problem, and they have a problem that they don't expand militarily the way the old Soviet Union used to around the world, and all these proxy wars, Latin America, South America, Africa. The Chinese are doing business in these places.
Exactly, Will. They don't need to fight like the old Soviets used to. They are winning it by economic means. They're buying everything and they're controlling that, and they're going to hold those countries ransom by the balls, especially economically. That is what they have done in the United States. They own 60%.
By the basketballs.
Oh, sorry, by the basketballs.
Yeah.
They've owned 60% of the farmlands in the United States, and that's just in the United States alone. That's just an example. They're doing that to other countries.
This is incredible that we're allowing the Chinese. I mean, when you just throw up your hands like, what is going on? It's just like the invasion across the border that isn't happening in the United States, too. So why pay attention to any laws once you get in the country if you didn't have to pay in?
Well, this is it. We've become too soft, and you know, we're not prepared, or we haven't been prepared, because our politicians have taken their eye off the ball to actually defend the well-being, in the wider sense of the idea, of our respective countries. You know, this idea that the free market is always right is in fact generally correct, except when you're dealing with investors from countries which are themselves not free markets. We see it in the UK. So wrong for British government to own energy utility companies. Fine, privatised all of a sudden. These energy utility companies are owned by state-owned companies in other countries. So how is that right?
Yeah, so it's the transfer of assets within the countries because of the free market, so-called free trade, is allowing the enemies in principle and in financial terms to take over our resources. I don't mean on the Western resources.
If I believe in tolerance, do I have to tolerate somebody else's intolerance?
That is a question that even Socrates had trouble with.
It's the same asymmetrical approach to life, unfortunately.
You've got to finish now.
Yes, pity.
Even Socrates had trouble with that. I guess you were getting wound up, and we were ready to go.
We were
just getting our trousers off and ready to mud wrestle. Okay.
Speak for yourself. My trousers are remaining firmly on.
Yeah, with belt and suspenders, or belt and braces.
Belt and braces,
in your case.
In my case.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. I want to thank my guest, Olgierd Uziemblo, distinguished Chinese expert. We also have Anthony McFarlane Gonzalez, our ex-Special Forces medical man and expert on aid.
And bearer, may I say, of rather startling news. And
bearer of breaking news, actually. Yeah. So that's amazing. That'll be on tonight on the show, Saturday night at 10 p.m. and Sunday night at 10 p.m. on TV Republica, on satellite for those of you in Europe, and on YouTube for those of you in the United States. So stay tuned to our channel. Thank you, Nicholas Richardson,
always a pleasure,
for being in the studio. And may I say, you're all looking well. Why don't you stay, though?